Everything you've been taught about vegetable gardening is based on a lie, that vegetables are supposed to die every year. But that's not biology, that's marketing. In nature, plants want to survive, they want to come back. And some vegetables, when you stop treating them like annuals and start treating them like the perennials they actually are, will outlive your tomatoes by decades. Rhubarb that feeds your great-grandchildren, sorrel that spreads like wildfire, horseradish that becomes impossible to kill. The garden industry taught you to replant. Nature is teaching you to let go. Now, if that just made something click in your mind, if you're realizing there might be a completely different way to garden that nobody ever told you about, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to share in the next few minutes is going to fundamentally change how you think about growing food, and I want to make sure you don't miss what's coming next. Let me be completely honest with you about why this matters so much. Most gardeners I meet are absolutely exhausted. Every single spring, you're starting from zero. You're spending money at the garden center, buying seed packets, buying starter plants, filling your cart with supplies. You're out there breaking your back, tilling soil, creating perfect rows, and you're telling yourself this is the year you'll finally keep up with everything. And then summer arrives with its heat and chaos. Life gets busy, you miss a few days of waiting, the weeds explode, and by fall you're standing in front of a half-dead garden feeling like you failed. Then winter comes, everything dies, and next March you're right back at that garden center spending another $70, making the same promises that this time will be different. But here's the truth, nobody in the gardening industry wants you to know. You're not failing. You've been set up to fail by a system that profits from you replanting every single year. Because a garden that doesn't need annual replanting doesn't generate annual sales. And there's an entire category of vegetables that will grow back year after year after year from just one planting. They require almost no maintenance once established. They actually get stronger and more productive as they age. These are perennial vegetables, and they're about to completely transform how you garden. So let me walk you through these 20 vegetables in detail. These aren't just plants. They're investments in your future self. They're time you're banking now that will pay dividends for years or decades. 1. Asparagus. This is for zones 3 through 8, which covers most of the United States and similar climates worldwide. Asparagus is probably the most famous perennial vegetable, and for good reason. You plant what are called crowns. These are one-year-old root systems that look like an octopus with lots of dangly roots spreading out from a central point. You dig a trench about 6 to 8 inches deep and 12 inches wide, create a little mound in the center, and spread those roots over the mound. Then you cover them with a few inches of soil. As the plants grow throughout that first season, you gradually fill in the trench completely. Now here's the crucial part. The first year, you don't harvest anything, not a single spear. You let everything grow into those tall, feathery, fern-like fronds. Those fronds are photosynthesizing, making energy, and sending it down to the roots to build that underground crown bigger and stronger. The second year, you can harvest lightly for maybe a week or two, taking only the thickest spears. But year 3 is when the magic happens. Suddenly, you're getting dozens of thick spears every single day for 6 to 8 weeks in spring. The harvest is incredible. And this continues for 15 to 30 years minimum, with some beds documented producing for 50-plus years. Asparagus loves full sun, well-drained soil rich in organic matter, and it's incredibly cold hardy. Those roots survive deep freezes and come back stronger. Each crown needs about 18 inches of space because they spread out underground. And once established, they need almost no care, just a layer of compost or mulch each fall. The flavor of homegrown asparagus is incomparable to store-bought. It's tender, sweet, and you can eat it raw right from the garden. This is truly a planted once and harvest for decades vegetable. 2. Rhubarb, zones 3 through 8, and it actually prefers areas with cold winters because it needs a period of dormancy to thrive. Rhubarb is one of the most indestructible perennial vegetables you can grow. You start with a root division or a potted plant, and you plant it in a spot with full sun to partial shade. Give it rich, well-drained soil and plenty of space. Mature rhubarb plants can be 3 to 4 feet across. That first year, again, you don't harvest. Let it establish. Year 2, you might take a stalk or two. But by year 3, you've got this massive plant with huge leaves and thick stalks in shades of red, pink, or green, depending on the variety. The stalks are what you harvest. They have this wonderful tart, tangy flavor that's perfect for pies, jams, sauces, or even savory dishes. You never eat the leaves, though. They contain oxalic acid and are toxic. To harvest, you grab a stalk near the base and twist and pull, and it comes right off. The plant just keeps producing new stalks all season long, from spring through early summer. And here's the beautiful thing. Rhubarb is nearly unkillable. It survives neglect, drought, poor soil, harsh winters. I've seen rhubarb plants that are 40 years old, passed down through generations, still producing abundantly. Some crowns get so massive they need to be divided every decade or so. And when you divide them, you get multiple new plants to share or expand your rhubarb patch. It's the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it perennial. One plant can easily provide enough rhubarb for a family, and it requires almost zero maintenance beyond occasionally mulching around it. And watching those huge leaves unfurl in early spring is one of the most satisfying signs that winter is over. 3. Artichokes. These are for warmer climates, zones 7 through 11 typically, though some varieties like Imperial Star can be grown as annuals in colder zones. Artichokes are dramatic, architectural plants that look absolutely stunning in a garden. They're actually giant thistles related to cardoons, and they grow into these huge plants, 4 to 5 feet tall and equally wide, with silvery gray, deeply cut leaves that catch the light beautifully. The part we eat is actually the immature flower bud. If you let one keep growing without harvesting, it opens into this spectacular purple thistle flower that bees absolutely love. To grow artichokes as perennials, you need a climate without hard freezes, or you need to protect them heavily in winter in Zone 7. Plant them in full sun in well-drained soil enriched with lots of compost. Space them at least 4 feet apart because they get massive. The first year you might get a few small buds, but by year 2 and 3, each plant can produce dozens of artichokes per season. The main harvest is in late spring and early summer, and in mild climates you can get a second harvest in fall. To harvest, you cut the buds when they're still tight and compact before the scales start opening. Fresh artichokes are incredible. You can steam them, grill them, roast them. The flavor is nutty, slightly sweet, with that characteristic artichoke richness. Plants are productive for 5 to 10 years, and in ideal Mediterranean climates like coastal California, they can last even longer. They need regular water during the growing season, but are fairly drought-tolerant once established. And they're as much ornamental as edible. Many gardeners grow them just for their dramatic presence in the landscape. The combination of food production and visual impact makes them special. 4. Horseradish, zones 4 through 8. Now, horseradish is almost too successful. It's so vigorous that the challenge isn't getting it to grow, it's containing it. You start with a small root cutting, maybe 4 to 6 inches long. You plant it at a 45-degree angle in loose, rich soil, with the top of the root about 2 to 3 inches below the surface. And then you wait. The first year you see leaves emerge, big, coarse, dock-like leaves. But underground, that root is spreading like crazy, sending out lateral roots in all directions. By year 2, you can start harvesting. You dig down in fall after frost has killed back the leaves, and you unearth these long, thick, white roots that smell absolutely pungent. The smell is intense. It clears your sinuses immediately. You peel and grate the roots to make fresh horseradish sauce, and the flavor is incomparable to store-bought. It's hot, sharp, complex, with this nasal heat that's different from pepper heat. And here's the thing. When you harvest, you almost never get all the roots. Little pieces break off and stay in the soil, and each piece becomes a new plant. Within a few years, horseradish spreads everywhere. Some gardeners plant it in buried containers or landscape fabric barriers to contain it. Others just give it a corner of the garden and let it do its thing. The leaves are not typically eaten, though young spring leaves can be cooked like greens. It's the roots you're after. Horseradish is incredibly cold-hardy and survives harsh winters with no protection. It tolerates poor soil and neglect. In fact, it thrives on neglect. Once you plant horseradish, you have it forever. And if you love that sharp, sinus-clearing kick in your cooking, in sauces, with roast beef, in Bloody Marys, you'll appreciate having a lifetime supply. 5. Walking onions, also called Egyptian onions, tree onions, or topset onions, zones 3 through 9. These are genuinely one of the most fascinating vegetables you can grow, and they're incredibly productive. They look like regular scallions or bunching onions for most of the year, hollow tubular leaves growing in clumps from underground bulbs. But in early summer, something magical happens. They send up a thick flower stalk, and instead of producing flowers and seeds at the top like most onions, they produce clusters of tiny aerial bulblets. These little bulbs form up the top of the stalk, sometimes multiple clusters stacked on top of each other, which is why they're called tree onions. As these bulblets mature and grow heavier throughout the summer, eventually the stalk can't support the weight anymore. It bends over, sometimes in a dramatic arc, and the bulblets touch the ground a few inches or even a foot away from the parent plant. And then those bulblets sprout roots and grow, creating new plants. This is how they walk across your garden. They literally plant themselves in a new location every year. You can harvest the greens like scallions anytime, cutting them and letting them regrow. You can harvest the underground bulbs like shallots. They're smaller than regular onions but have great flavor. And you can harvest the aerial bulblets to eat raw, pickle, or replant elsewhere. The flavor is oniony, a bit more pungent than scallions, less sharp than garlic. They're cold-hardy and survive harsh winters underground. They tolerate a wide range of soils and conditions. And once you plant them, they maintain themselves forever, multiplying both underground and aerially. Many gardeners find them slightly invasive because they spread so readily, but if you love having fresh onion flavor available year-round with zero work, they're perfect. Plus, they're just fun to watch. There's something delightful about seeing those stalks tip over and plant themselves. 6. Potato onions, sometimes called multiplier onions or mother onions, zones 3 through 9. These are different from walking onions. They multiply underground rather than aerially. You plant a single bulb in fall, just like you'd plant a garlic clove or regular onion set. Throughout winter and spring, that bulb doesn't just grow, it divides underground into multiple bulbs clustered around the original. By early summer when you harvest, instead of one bulb, you have 5, 6, sometimes 8 bulbs where you planted one. Each bulb is about the size of a small onion or large shallot. The flavor is mild, sweet, and excellent for cooking. They store incredibly well. You can keep them in a cool, dry place for months, just like regular onions. The strategy is simple. In late summer or fall, you replant some of your largest bulbs, spacing them about 6 inches apart, and harvest the rest for eating. Those replanted bulbs divide again over winter. It's exponential multiplication. From one bulb planted, you get 6. Plant 3 of those 6, you get 18 the next year. Plant 6 of those, you get 36. Within just a few years, from a handful of original bulbs, you can have hundreds. And because they store well, you essentially have onions available year-round. They're low-maintenance, cold-hardy, and disease-resistant. The greens are also edible if you want to harvest them like scallions before the bulbs mature. This is one of the most practical perennial vegetables for self-sufficiency because onions are such a staple ingredient in cooking. Once you establish potato onions, you rarely need to buy onions again. 7. Jerusalem artichokes, also called sunchokes, zones 3 through 9. These are tall, sunflower-like plants that can reach 8 to 10 feet in height with bright yellow flowers in late summer. They're actually related to sunflowers, not artichokes, despite the name. The edible part is the knobby, irregular tubers that form underground. These tubers have a crisp texture when raw and a creamy, slightly nutty, slightly sweet flavor when cooked. They taste vaguely like artichoke hearts, which is how they got the name. You plant tubers in spring, just a few inches deep, and they grow vigorously throughout the season. The first year, you'll get a decent harvest. But here's where you need to be careful. Jerusalem artichokes spread aggressively underground. Each plant produces numerous tubers, and every tiny piece of tuber left in the ground becomes a new plant. Within a couple years, they can colonize large areas. Many gardeners plant them in contained beds with barriers, or in areas where spreading isn't a problem, like along fence lines or in wild corners. To harvest, you wait until after frost kills back the tops in fall, then dig up the tubers as needed throughout winter. They store best in the ground, so many people leave them there and harvest all winter long. The tubers don't store well out of the ground, they shrivel quickly. So the strategy is in-ground storage and harvest on demand. You can roast them, sauté them, make soup, even eat them raw in salads. They contain inulin instead of starch, which means they had a lower glycemic impact than potatoes. But some people find inulin causes digestive gas. Start with small amounts if you're trying them for the first time. Once established, Jerusalem artichokes need zero care. They tolerate drought, poor soil, and neglect. They're nearly impossible to kill, which is both their strength and their challenge. But if you have space and you love their unique flavor, they're incredibly productive. 8. Sea kale. Zones 4 through 8, especially successful in coastal areas. This is one of the rarer perennial vegetables, but it's worth seeking out. Sea kale is native to coastal areas of Europe, where it grows wild on beaches and cliffsides. It's incredibly tolerant of salty, sandy soil and harsh maritime conditions. The plant forms a mound of thick, silvery blue cabbage-like leaves that are beautiful enough to be ornamental. In spring, you can harvest the young shoots, called chards, before they fully emerge and leaf out. These shoots taste similar to asparagus, with a slight cabbage or broccoli flavor. Later in the season, you can harvest young leaves to use like kale or collards. And in summer, it produces clusters of white, fragrant flowers that are also edible and attract pollinators. To grow sea kale, plant crowns or root cuttings in well-drained, sandy or gravelly soil in full sun. It tolerates partial shade, but produces best in sun. The roots go deep, making it very drought-tolerant once established. Some gardeners force the shoots in early spring by covering the crowns with large pots or forcing blankets to exclude light, which makes the shoots more tender and mild. Sea kale can produce for a decade or more, and it's one of those gourmet perennial vegetables that's prized by chefs but unknown to most home gardeners. It's a conversation piece, something special and different that most people have never tasted. If you live near the coast or have sandy, well-drained soil, sea kale is an excellent choice. 9. Sorrel. Zones 3 through 9. Sorrel is one of the easiest and most reliable perennial greens you can grow. There are a few different types. French sorrel and garden sorrel are most common, but all have that characteristic lemony, tangy, slightly sour flavor from oxalic acid in the leaves. The plants form clumps of arrow-shaped leaves that emerge in early spring and keep producing through fall. To grow sorrel, plant divisions or seeds in spring in rich, moist soil. It tolerates full sun and cool climates, but appreciates some afternoon shade in hot areas. The leaves are ready to harvest when they're 4 to 6 inches long. You can cut individual leaves or cut the whole plant down to a few inches above the ground, and it regrows quickly. The flavor is bright and citrusy, perfect for adding zip to salads, soups, sauces, or omelets. Classic French sorrel soup is made by sautéing sorrel in butter until it melts down into a puree, then adding cream or stock. It turns from bright green to an olive color when cooked. Sorrel is also high in vitamin C and minerals. The plant sends up flower stalks in summer, and most gardeners cut these off to keep the plant focused on leaf production rather than seed production. But even if you let it flower and go to seed, it keeps producing leaves. Sorrel is virtually maintenance-free. It survives cold winters by dying back to the ground and re-emerging in spring. It tolerates neglect, drought, and less than perfect soil. Plants live for 10+ years easily, and they slowly expand by self-seeding or by the crown getting larger. This is one of those perennial greens that once you discover it, you wonder how you ever cooked without it. 10. Good King Henry, zones 3 through 9. This is an heirloom perennial vegetable that was grown throughout medieval Europe but has almost disappeared from modern gardens. It's related to lamb's quarters and spinach, and every part of the plant is edible. The leaves taste like mild spinach and can be eaten raw in salads when young or cooked like spinach when mature. The young shoots that emerge in spring can be blanched and eaten like asparagus, and even the immature flower spikes can be steamed and eaten like broccoli. It's an incredibly versatile plant. Good King Henry thrives in partial shade, which makes it valuable because most vegetables need full sun. If you have spots under trees or on the north side of buildings where nothing else will grow, this is your plant. It forms a clump of triangular, slightly arrow-shaped leaves that emerge from a central crown. In late spring, it sends up flower spikes with tiny greenish flowers, but you typically harvest these before they mature. To grow it, plant roots or crowns in spring in well-drained soil enriched with compost. It tolerates a wide range of conditions but prefers consistent moisture. The first year, harvest lightly. By year 2, you can harvest more heavily. The plant can produce for many years with minimal care. Some sources say it can live 20+ years. It's not widely available commercially, so you might need to seek out specialty seed companies or heritage seed exchanges. But once you have it, it's a reliable source of greens in spring and summer. The flavor is mild and pleasant, more subtle than spinach. And the fact that it thrives in shade makes it especially valuable for maximizing production in different microclimates around your property. 11. Turkish Rocket, zones 4 through 9. This is a perennial green with a spicy, peppery, arugula-like flavor that some people find even more intense than annual arugula. It's also called Turkish warty cabbage or bunaeus. The plant forms a rosette of deeply toothed, somewhat rough-textured leaves in spring. The young leaves are tender and perfect for salads with that sharp, mustardy bite. As the season progresses, the leaves get tougher and more pungent, better for cooking. In late spring and early summer, it sends up branching flowering stems with small yellow flowers. These flowers and young flower buds are also edible and delicious. After flowering, it sets seed prolifically, and this is where Turkish Rocket can become problematic. It self-seeds everywhere. Once you have it, you'll have it forever, and you'll likely have it popping up all over your garden. Some gardeners consider it a weed, others call it a blessing. It depends on how much you love spicy greens. If you want to control it, deadhead the flowers before they set seed, or let it seed in a confined area and weed out volunteers elsewhere. Turkish Rocket is incredibly low maintenance. It tolerates poor soil, drought, and neglect. The roots go deep, making it resilient. It dies back in winter in cold climates and re-emerges in early spring, often one of the first greens available. In warmer climates, it may stay evergreen. It's not commonly available in garden centers, so you'll need to source seeds or plants from specialty suppliers. But if you're an adventurous gardener who loves bold, peppery flavors, and you have space where aggressive self-seeding isn't a problem, Turkish Rocket is a fun addition. 12. Watercress, zones 3 through 11, but it requires specific conditions, consistent moisture or flowing water. Watercress is a semi-aquatic perennial that grows naturally along streams, pond edges, and wetlands. Those crisp, peppery leaves are prized in salads and sandwiches, and fresh watercress has a bright, clean flavor that's completely different from limp store-bought bunches. To grow watercress successfully, you need a water source. The ideal setup is a shallow stream or creek where you can plant it along the edges in the shallows. It also grows well in the muddy margins of ponds. Some gardeners create artificial bog gardens or water features specifically for watercress. It needs flowing or regularly refreshed water to thrive. Stagnant water leads to poor growth and flavor. The water should be clean and ideally cool. Plant it by simply pushing stems or rooted cuttings into muddy soil at the water's edge. It roots quickly and spreads along the waterline. In the right conditions, watercress grows rapidly and can almost become weedy. You harvest by cutting stems above the water level. New shoots keep growing from the base and from nodes along the stems. The flavor is best in spring and fall when the weather is cool. In hot summer, watercress can become more bitter and tough. In cold winters, it dies back but reemerges from roots in spring. If you have a natural water feature on your property, watercress is an incredible addition. Self-maintaining, highly nutritious, and delicious. It's high in vitamins K, C, and A, plus minerals and beneficial compounds. If you don't have natural water but want to try it, you can grow it in containers that sit in trays of water that you refresh frequently. It's more work that way, but possible. 13. Welsh onions. Also called bunching onions, scallions, or Japanese bunching onions. Zones 3 through 9. These are versatile, productive perennial onions that form clumps of hollow tubular leaves growing from small white bulbs. Unlike bulbing onions that form one large bulb and go dormant, Welsh onions grow continuously and form multiple small bulbs that cluster together. Each clump multiplies over time as new bulbs form alongside the old ones. To grow Welsh onions, plant divisions of existing clumps or start from seed. They prefer full sun and well-drained soil, but tolerate a wide range of conditions. As the clumps get larger, they can be divided every few years. You dig up a clump, pull apart the individual bulbs and their attached greens, and replant them spaced out. This gives you more plants to expand your patch or share. You harvest Welsh onions by cutting the green tops an inch or two above the soil line, and they regrow quickly. The flavor is mild and oniony, perfect for garnishing, stir-fries, salads, soups. You can also harvest the small white bulbs if you thin the clumps, and they taste like small, mild onions. Welsh onions are cold-hardy and survive harsh winters, dying back in extreme cold, but re-emerging in spring. In mild climates, they stay green year-round, providing fresh green onion flavor even in winter. They rarely have pest or disease problems. They don't require fertilization if the soil is reasonably good, and they're incredibly productive. One established clump can provide steady harvests for years. This is one of the most practical perennial vegetables because green onions are used so frequently in cooking. Having a continuous supply steps away from your kitchen is incredibly convenient. 14. Garlic chives. Zones 3 through 9. These look similar to regular chives, but have flat, grass-like leaves instead of hollow tubular ones, and the flavor is distinctly garlicky rather than oniony. In late summer and fall, they produce gorgeous clusters of white, star-shaped flowers on upright stems. These flowers are not just beautiful, they're delicious and edible, adding a mild garlic flavor to salads. The flowers also attract beneficial insects like hoverflies and parasitic wasps that help control aphids and other pests. To grow garlic chives, plant divisions or start from seed in spring. They prefer full sun but tolerate partial shade. They form clumps that slowly expand over time. You harvest the leaves by cutting them an inch above the soil level with scissors, and they regrow within a week or two. The leaves are perfect for flavoring dishes anywhere you'd use garlic: stir-fries, eggs, dumplings, noodles. In Asian cooking, garlic chives are a staple ingredient. You can also blanch the plants by covering them with a pot to exclude light. which produces pale yellow leaves with a more delicate flavor, prized for certain dishes. Garlic chives self-seed prolifically if you let the flowers go to seed. Some gardeners deadhead the flowers to prevent this, others let them seed freely and weed out unwanted volunteers. In some regions, garlic chives have become invasive from escaping gardens, but in a managed garden setting, they're easy to control by deadheading. The plants are cold-hardy, drought-tolerant once established, and long-lived. A single clump can produce for decades with minimal care. And those beautiful late-season flowers are a bonus that many ornamental plants can't match. You get food and beauty together. 15. Lovage. Zones 3 through 9. Lovage is a dramatic architectural perennial herb that grows into a massive plant, 6 to 8 feet tall in ideal conditions, spreading 3 to 4 feet wide. It's related to celery and has a similar but much more intense flavor. The hollow stems and leaves taste like super concentrated celery with hints of parsley and anise. To grow lovage, plant a root division or potted plant in spring in deep, rich, moist soil. It prefers full sun in northern climates, but appreciates afternoon shade in hot areas. Give it plenty of space because it gets huge. That first year, you'll see modest growth, but by year 2 and 3, it explodes into this towering presence in the garden. You can harvest leaves throughout the growing season by cutting outer stems. The young stems can be used like celery stalks in cooking. The seeds, which form in late summer, are also edible and have a flavor similar to celery seed. And the roots, though not commonly eaten, are edible and aromatic. One plant is honestly enough for most families because the flavor is so strong. You use lovage more as a seasoning than as a bulk vegetable. A few leaves add intense celery flavor to soups, stews, stocks, or salads. The stems can be candied like angelica for dessert decorations. In medieval times, lovage was used as a medicinal herb and a bath additive for fragrance. Lovage is incredibly long-lived. Some sources say it can live 50 years or more. It's cold-hardy, dying back completely in winter and re-emerging vigorously in spring. It has few pest problems and tolerates neglect. The flowers, which appear in umbels like dill or carrot flowers, attract beneficial insects. And the plant has this wonderful savory aroma when you brush against it. If you have space for a large permanent herb and you love the flavor of celery, lovage is a fantastic perennial to grow once and harvest forever. 16. Caucasian spinach. Zones 5 through 9, though it can be grown as a short-lived perennial in colder zones with protection. This is a rare and unusual perennial vine with heart-shaped leaves that taste like spinach. It's also called Hablitzia tamnoides, and it's native to mountain forests in the Caucasus region. The plant is a vigorous climber, sending up vining stems that can reach 10 to 15 feet in a season, twining around supports like a pole bean. The unique thing about Caucasian spinach is that it's shade-tolerant and actually prefers partial shade. This makes it valuable for growing on a shady fence, trellis, or arbor where few vegetables will produce. To grow it, plant the tuberous roots or crowns in spring in well-drained soil enriched with compost. Provide a sturdy trellis or support for the vines to climb. As the vines grow in spring and early summer, you harvest the young leaves and shoot tips, which are tender and mild with that spinach-like flavor. You can eat them raw in salads or cooked like spinach. The plant flowers in early summer with small greenish flowers, then dies back in midsummer, going dormant for the rest of the year. This is different from most perennials that grow throughout the season. Caucasian spinach has a short active period, then rests. In fall or early spring, the crown puts out new shoots. It's cold-hardy and survives harsh winters. Because it's rare, finding sources for the plants or roots can be challenging, but specialty nurseries and seed exchanges occasionally offer it. Once established, it's long-lived and requires little care, beyond providing support for the vines. If you have a shady spot that produces nothing else, Caucasian spinach can turn it into a productive area. 17. Groundnut. also called Apios americana, or American groundnut, zones 3 through 9. This is a native North American perennial vine that was an important food source for indigenous peoples and early colonists. The plant produces edible tubers underground that form along the roots like beads on a string. These tubers are starchy and nutritious, with a flavor that's somewhat like a potato, but nuttier and richer. They're high in protein, much more than potatoes, and have a slightly sweet, earthy taste. To grow groundnut, plant tubers in spring in moist, fertile soil. The vines twine and climb, reaching 6 to 8 feet, so provide a trellis or fence. The plant also produces clusters of fragrant, brownish-purple flowers in summer that smell like chocolate or vanilla, which is a delightful bonus. Groundnut is a nitrogen fixer. It has root nodules with bacteria that convert atmospheric nitrogen into plant-available nitrogen, which actually improves your soil. This makes it valuable in permaculture systems. The tubers are ready to harvest in fall after the first frost, when the vines die back. You dig carefully to avoid breaking the tubers apart from the roots. Larger tubers are harvested for eating, and smaller ones can be replanted or left in place to grow larger next year. The tubers need to be cooked. They're not eaten raw. You can boil, roast, or fry them. Historically, they were a staple food, but they're rarely grown today, which is a shame because they're productive and nutritious. The plant can spread and form patches over time. It's not invasive, but it's persistent. Once established, groundnut requires little care, tolerates wet soil better than most vegetables, and provides both food and nitrogen fixation. It's a wonderful plant for adventurous gardeners interested in indigenous crops and permaculture. 18. Tree collards. Zones 7 through 11, essentially frost-free or light frost areas. Tree collards are a perennial form of collard greens that grow like a woody shrub or small tree rather than an annual plant. They develop a thick, woody stem or trunk that can reach 6 to 8 feet tall over several years, with branching growth and large collard leaves at the ends of the branches. The leaves are harvested continuously. You pick outer leaves and new ones keep forming at the growing tips. This gives you fresh collard greens year-round in mild climates. Tree collards don't produce seeds. They're propagated by cuttings, which root easily in water or soil. To grow them, you plant rooted cuttings in rich soil in full sun. In the first year, they establish and grow moderately. By year 2 and 3, they become productive bushy plants. You can harvest leaves regularly without harming the plant. In fact, regular harvesting encourages bushier growth. The flavor is typical collard, earthy, slightly bitter, and perfect for traditional southern cooking, stir-fries, or kale smoothies. Tree collards can produce for 5 to 10 years or more in frost-free climates. In zones with light frosts, they may die back partially in winter, but re-sprout from the woody base in spring. In colder zones, they can be grown in large containers and brought indoors for winter, though they need space and light. They have few pest problems, though cabbage worms can sometimes bother them. They're drought-tolerant once established and handle neglect well. The woody stems can eventually be pruned to shape the plant or encourage branching. Tree collards are especially popular in permaculture and sustainable gardening circles because they provide continuous harvests without replanting and fit into edible forest garden designs. If you live in a mild climate and you love leafy greens, tree collards are an incredible perennial addition. 19. Babington's leek, zones 5 through 9. This is a fascinating and rare perennial leek that most gardeners have never heard of. It's related to regular leeks, but behaves completely differently. Instead of forming one large shaft that you harvest and then the plant dies, Babington's leek is truly perennial. It forms clumps of leaves that look similar to leeks or large grass. The leaves and young stalks have a mild leek or onion flavor and can be used like leeks in cooking. In summer, it sends up a flower stalk, but instead of producing seeds, it produces bulbils. small aerial bulbs at the top of the stalk along with the flowers. Each bulbil can be planted to grow a new plant, or eaten, or left to fall and plant itself. Underground, the plant also forms small bulblets around the base that slowly expand the clump. Over time, one plant becomes a spreading colony. Babington's leek is incredibly cold-hardy and virtually indestructible once established. It tolerates poor soil, drought, and neglect. Some sources say it's one of the hardiest perennial alliums, surviving extreme cold and heat. To grow it, plant bulbils or divisions in spring or fall in well-drained soil in full sun to partial shade. Harvest outer leaves and stalks as needed, leaving the center growing point intact. The plant regrows quickly. The flavor is milder and more complex than regular onions or leeks, with a sweet undertone. It's excellent in soups, stir-fries, or anywhere you'd use leeks. The challenge with Babington's leek is finding it. It's not commercially common. You'll need to source it from specialty nurseries, plant exchanges, or other gardeners. But once you have it forever, and it's a true curiosity and conversation piece in the garden. 20. Scorzonera, also called black salsify or viper's grass, zones 3 through 9. Scorzonera is a perennial vegetable grown primarily for its long black skin taproots that have a sweet, nutty, slightly oyster-like flavor when cooked. The plant forms a rosette of grass-like leaves at ground level and can be almost invisible in the garden. In summer, it sends up flowering stalks with cheerful yellow dandelion-like flowers. The roots grow deep, often 2 feet down or more, making them drought-tolerant once established, but also making them challenging to harvest without breaking. To grow scorzonera, plant seeds or root pieces in spring in deep, loose soil. Rocky or compacted soil makes harvest difficult, so prepare the bed well. The first year, the plant establishes and grows a small root. Year 2, the root is larger and ready to harvest, though you can leave it to grow even larger in subsequent years. You harvest in fall or early spring by carefully digging with a spade or fork alongside the root and lifting it out. Scorzonera is unusual in that it can be grown as an annual, harvest year 1 roots, or as a perennial, leave some roots to regrow and spread. If you let some plants flower and seed, they self-sow, maintaining the patch. The roots are prepared by scrubbing, peeling, and boiling or roasting. They turn white when cooked and have this delicate, sweet, nutty flavor that's prized in European cuisine. Scorzonera was more commonly grown in the past and deserves a comeback. It's cold-hardy, low-maintenance, and productive. The deep roots also improve soil structure by breaking up compacted layers. This is a plant for patient gardeners who appreciate unique flavors and are willing to wait for the reward. If you've made it this far and you're genuinely excited about trying some of these plants, do me a favor and subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you're notified when I release more content about perennial gardening. Because we're building a community here of people who garden smarter, not harder. Now that you know all 20 plants in detail, let me talk about the practical
Sống trên đời này muốn đẹp lòng mọi người mà sao khó quá ai ơi. Đời là hận thua là ganh ghét hận thù, thường gieo tiếng oán cho người, chê nhiều hơn là khen. Thế nhân sự đời xấu là chỉ.
Year 3, production explodes. From that point forward, many perennials get more productive each year as they mature. So the timeline requires patience, but the payoff is decades of harvests from that one initial effort. The other key
còn ta như đóa hoa thơm, chỉ vì ganh đua, vì câu nói lơ lời, tình thân cũng hóa kẻ thù như là Kệ họ đi em, để anh lên hỏi ông trời, hỏi ai trong một kiếp người mà chưa từng mắc lỗi lầm chi. Kệ họ đi em, miễn sao ta sống chân thành, đừng quên ai tốt với mình, không hận thù tất cả rồi qua. Sống trên đời này muốn đẹp lòng mọi người, tình yêu thương hãy trao nhau. Đời đừng hơn thua, đừng ganh ghét hận thù, ngoài tai những chuyện của người ta được thêm niềm vui.
Every spring and exhaust yourself maintaining annual crops. You can plant things once and harvest for decades. You can build a garden that gets easier and more productive over time instead of requiring the same effort year after year. You can choose plants that want to survive, that want to give, and that ask very little in return except patience. A forever garden isn't built in a season. It's built in trust. It's built in those small acts of faith where you put something in the ground and believe it will return. And every single one of these 20 vegetables is practicing that faith. So pick one, just one to start. Maybe it's asparagus for those spring harvests. Maybe it's rhubarb for pies. Maybe it's walking onions because they make you smile. Plant it this season, give it 3 years, and watch what happens. Come back and tell me your story in the comments. Tell me which plant you chose. And if this video gave you a completely new perspective on gardening, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And remember, the best time to plant a perennial was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. So go plant your future.